You're listening to The Dope Experience with Rambi Bryant, Javier Collins, and Sal Vergara. Our conversations revolve around people looking to evolve and transform into the next phase of their lives. We're here to help them navigate this journey by developing one's perspective every day. Welcome back to The Dope Experience. I'm Sal Vergara with my illustrious co-host, Rambi Bryant and Javier Collins. We've got a fun show today with a very fun guest and a new friend of ours, Miss Yvonne Wolff. How are you, Yvonne?
Great.
Welcome to the
show. Excited to be here. Thank you.
Welcome to the show. Now, I was introduced to you by my boss a few weeks ago, and we just hit it off. Won't you agree? We just hit it off.
Absolutely.
Yvonne had introduced me to a plethora of world-class professionals. She was also very gracious in participating in my first Ideal Roundtable, and that stands for Inclusion, Diversity, Equality, and Authentic Leadership. So I had Yvonne along with three other diversity and inclusion and equality executives on a panel, and we had a 2-hour conversation with regards to what's happening in business today, what's happening in life and society, and what steps that we needed to take as HR professionals to help promote inclusion, diversity, and equality. Also, big congratulations.
Did y'all do anything else, Sal?
Pardon me?
Did y'all have lunch? Did y'all?
No.
What else did y'all do?
No, we just had a great conversation. It was actually.
I mean, at the event. Sorry, at the event.
No, that the event was virtual, so it was all remote.
Right.
It was a really good conversation, and I think we'll get into it here in the conversation. But at the end of it, not to sound hokey, but it kind of left you with the warm fuzzies that we all were talking about something very passionate that's to us, and given the landscape of what's going on in society, I thought it was apropos to have that conversation. And the three of us guys, we've been talking about this, that we usually don't talk about something as provocative as that, but it's like silence is complicity, and we kind of all agreed on the panel that we have to say something, and we have to motivate and inspire folks to make a change. So we talked about this earlier too, but next week, Yvonne is starting as the head of HR for the Bill and Melinda Gates Medical Research Institute. So bravo. Yay. And congratulations to you.
Thank you. My dream job.
Yeah, great. Well, let me just kick it off. The theme to the show is Path to Purpose, and that's kind of from the conversation that you and I had. And when we first chatted, you said something that stuck with me with respect to your path to purpose, and that you had to sit still to connect with yourself. And quote unquote, that clarity created intentionality, which propelled me to this point. Those are your words. Yeah. And that's the pretty stuff when you said it, when you sent it to me. And what does that mean? What do you mean by that? I know what that means, but I want you to explain it in your own words of how that impacts you.
First of all, thank you again for having me. And I hope whatever I share, resonates for someone and inspires them to find their purpose as well. And I'm a work in progress, but I think what's happened here in this whole pandemic is it's forced all of us to kind of sit still and be quiet. And in some ways that's a blessing. So I feel really fortunate that I've landed my dream job in the middle of what is a really difficult time for the majority of the people in the world, and certainly here in the United States. So I really, really take this on with great respect and reverence. For me, this whole journey to finding one's purpose, I'd say it probably happened a little later in life because like most people, I was just propelled from role to role and doing really interesting things. And people were constantly asking me to go here and try this and do that. And I was collecting lots of accomplishments. And then at some point in my life, I had one of my first epiphanies where I was in a job and I was in a C-suite role and realized that a lot of the people in the C-suite didn't share my values. And there were some things that happened that led to my leaving. And I literally call that, sort of exiting the C-suite cesspool And then I really had to just take a minute and figure out what was really going on. And I sought out some coaching, and it's exciting to be with a bunch of coaches on this call. But I sought out a life coach, and I started to realize that there were only parts of my life that I was really pursuing. It was largely professional, intellectual and professional, but I was really cut off from a lot of things that really mattered for me. And she made me draw my pie. And I realized that more around spirituality, something about giving back, those were, and also something about creativity. Those are the three pieces that were missing. And so I set out figuring out and deciding that I was going to build those things back into my life. And then, further along the way, I found myself once again in one of these really cool organizational roles, doing really fancy, exciting stuff, leading some global work, helping a new CEO bring her vision and culture to life. But I was also working in an organization where most people weren't a lot like me. Most of the people were actually from the UK, and I was the only one in the US. And so I was constantly feeling a little left out and a little different, which I was used to being different, by the way. So that wasn't really unique. And so once again, I went back to my pie and I said, hey, what's missing here? And I decided I wanted to volunteer. And I found myself in Silver Spring, Maryland, where there are a lot of people from Africa, and they were really talking a lot about Africa. Next thing I know, I'm volunteering in Sierra Leone. And it was really interesting because there, where electricity didn't work a lot, the internet didn't happen a lot, you sat still a lot. And I was really forced to be alone with my thoughts. I did a lot of blogging. And it was there that I really wrote down. This was the first time I wrote down what I wanted to do professionally and what I wanted my life to be like. And from then on, I just kept working towards that journey. And here's where I find myself today. And I got pretty specific too. I said I wanted to work for a nonprofit, and I added in the word well-led, which there aren't a lot of well-led nonprofits, and working on marginalized communities with a particular focus on Africa. And I said I wanted to be head of HR. So that was pretty specific. And a lot of people kept saying, no, you've been doing all this big corporate work. You should stay in corporate. You should stay in corporate. But I said, no, I really want to work for an organization whose values align with mine. But again, it was really just taking a lot of time to sit still and notice, to get to know myself, really be honest about where I put myself at times that didn't really serve who I am. And then to even challenge myself as to why I would do that. That really released me and freed me up to pursue, I believe, what I'm really here and my purpose.
Yeah, so you said it took you 30 years to find your dream job. And
yeah.
It took you getting a life coach to, find your purpose. What would you tell somebody that doesn't have a life coach? What's something they can do to find their purpose? You mentioned the pie. Are you able to explain a little bit more about the pie and how that looks?
Yeah. Well, I also say, you have friends. I think a big part of discovering myself was spending a lot of time with a lot of people who I really respected, who would give me really honest feedback. I would ask people. In fact, it was a male friend of mine once who said to me, you're pretty lovable. Who do you love? And where do you want, and what organization deserves your talent? And he wasn't a life coach at all. He was just a friend, and it was really provocative. So the pie is just this whole idea of just drawing a circle and then drawing lines to divvy up how you're spending your time. So I remember this was in 2008 for me when I drew my pie for the first time. And I realized that about half of my pie was work. A quarter of my pie was, honestly, a quarter of my pie was probably being mommy, and another quarter of my pie was being wifey poo. And there was nothing about me in that. And there was very little about spirituality, and certainly nothing about creativity, and nothing really about purpose. So I made a decision to reduce the work piece and to make sure that relationships, particularly my son at the time, my husband, my friends, would be a bigger part, but I still didn't carve out much for myself. And that's really, I think, where my real journey and my real growth happened, was when I started to realize I needed to make myself a big part of that pie. And I also needed to make sure I was carving out time to really grow spiritually and to volunteer, give back, which has always been a really big part of who I am.
You're being very intentional. Yeah. And we had a show a few shows back. We had a show talking about code switching and shedding your color, shedding your black, as I would say if I was in corporate America. And so early on in your career, did you conform or confirm it to attempt to be accepted in the organizations, things such as wearing your hair different or speaking different?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think probably the biggest way parents, especially my mother, who gave me permission to be unique very early on. And again, I think I just always thought I was a little unique and odd and different. So I never expected to fit in, but I will say I grew up, I went to Catholic church, Catholic school, so I got used to uniforms fairly early on. So every company I've ever worked for, I wore a certain uniform. I remember early on in banking, wearing one of these androgynous suits with a little fluffy tie bow things. And then I went to work for a beverage company that everybody wore polo shirts and khakis and penny loafers. I mean, that's just the ugliest clothing on women, by the way. Don't ever make women wear khakis and polo shirts, And so I conformed, I did that. I think the biggest place where I probably altered my appearance to fit in was I used to, of course, straighten my hair. And I started straightening my hair in high school and did it all the way up until going to Sierra Leone in 2018. And that's when I just, embraced my messy, curly hair, and I cannot go back.
Did someone make a comment to you to do that, or did you intuitively assume that you had to do that?
No, I always wanted to, but in Africa, it gives you permission to just be you, which is really funny because a lot of the women there had weaves and wigs. And so I had probably more natural hair than most of the women that I dealt with or experienced in while I was in Africa. But, electricity is a little bit of a luxury. So things like blow dryers and things like that. And everything's different. The water's different. So you have to, I think I could not have the kind of high maintenance routine that I had in the United States while I was there. But I have to tell you, it was freeing. It was so freeing.
I'm curious, the straightening, did an event happen? Did someone say something to you that you felt the need to straighten your hair?
No. Early on, society, I grew up with the European images of beauty and I have really thick, curly, wild hair. And so I grew up believing that wild hair would be unprofessional. And so a more professional version, which I was socialized to believe, was blowing it straight and wearing it in one of those little page boy things, And so, yeah, I did that well for a long time. And I think I always wanted my sister was my inspiration. You learn a lot sometimes from your younger sister. So my younger sister was always the wilder version. I was the straight laced corporate girl and she was always the free spirit. And so she went natural a lot earlier than I did. And so she was a little bit of my inspiration. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you for speaking to that, Yvonne. That's a pretty important subject matter, and especially in today's society with regards to corporate culture. I really appreciate your story, first and foremost. And I thank you for, coming here and sharing it with us. What I liked about one of the response you had to Rami's question about coaching and how the first thing I heard you was feedback, right? You sought feedback, right? And that just made me think about the profession I originate from, right, in sports, and how feedback is such a necessary component to being successful in sports, that it's like immediate, right? It may be too immediate for some people. Feedback comes very straightforward, very unsolicited at times, right? But it's just a part of that culture, which is totally different than what someone like me's transition outside of football is like, right? So my question regarding all of that is for anyone who is experiencing a transition, or as we say, a transformation, what is some advice on how to identify or even approach individuals to get feedback from within your corporation?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. I think I've always been a feedback junkie. Partially because I just have always had this real commitment or interest in continuously improving, so much more like you as athletes, where you're practicing, you're getting feedback right away. I mean, you need it so you can know what you need to work harder on and things like that. And it's wonderful. In the neuroscience space, they actually say that you do better if you request feedback. Your brain is much, is ready to receive it. So I think because of that, because I've always sought out the feedback, I could handle it. I think it's harder if you're one of those individuals who isn't open to feedback. And then if somebody gives you feedback, it's a little hard. So I guess my advice to people would be just to give it a try. I mean, first of all, when a person decides to give you feedback, they actually have to be quite generous themselves. I mean, they have to be vulnerable. They have to, take some risks. So, I consider, the whole little saying, feedback is a gift. In fact, wait, I have a really cool, funny story about this. You just made me think about it. I was working for a really well-known hotel company, one of my favorite jobs. And I was working with this leadership team, and one of the leadership members, we were talking about this whole notion of feedback. And one day he was this very sort of very cerebral, super intelligent deal guy. Human beings were kind of a casualty, or they're just noise. They're just in the way. But one day he comes running down the hall telling me he totally got this whole notion of feedback. And, and what happened was he had read an article about a young lady who was a renowned soccer player. And she talks about how her field hockey coach had to tell her that she wasn't a good field hockey player. And what she ended up saying in the article is the process of giving her feedback about where she was bad freed her up to be successful somewhere else.
Oh, wow.
So I think that's a powerful story for people to hold on to, that if you, they might say something that you don't really want to hear, but it's better that you learn about that so you can make a choice. What are you going to do with that? Are you going to try to improve it? Or are you going to, much in the case of this young lady, take a different course, which might free you up to actually play and be more successful somewhere else?
Absolutely. And that choice you're referring to, it's totally based on attitude. It's totally based on how someone chooses to approach their life that day, right? We all have some bad days and some good days, but the idea is to string some of those good ones along.
Mm-hmm. But we only have one life, right? So you might as well lean into the one that you were supposed to have. And wasn't it somebody said, you might as well be you because everybody else is taken. So I think, that's the thing. I mean, we're all flawed. We're all just trying to show up every day and do something important in this world and be happy. And so why not just, lean into the space that brings that to life for you?
Yep.
I also believe that as a leader, on the person that's giving the feedback, like you said, you hit the nail on the head. They have to be vulnerable and gain that trust from the person, because depending on how they frame their feedback, it might not be accepted. And I feel like with a lot of leadership, that's the problem. Like they might be right, but they're wrong in how they framing it or telling that person. So that's been what I've seen so far. And the same thing in football. We're just forced to accept it. Are we just gonna get cut? Is this? I mean, that's just the culture of football. But in corporate America, I mean, in some organizations, it's kind of the same way, but their team, their company is not being very productive, all because of leadership.
Mm-hmm. And you know what, guys, that's why it's really good to see 3 men of color who are actually coaches and providing that feedback, because I've also seen too often in corporate America that feedback has been used to diminish and limit the potential of people who are unique and different in any way. So having coaches that understand your lived experience, who can give the coaching and the feedback, not from the standpoint of you're showing up different from me, but you're not showing up the best way that you could. I'm just really excited that 3 men of color have chosen to be executive coaches, because too often we don't get the benefit of receiving coaching from people who understand our lived experiences. And there's been some really nice studies about coaches really trying to own their own stuff and their own biases that they bring into coaching relationships. So again, it's refreshing to see men of color actually as executive coaches.
Now, you mentioned your journey, and each one of us has a different journey that we relate to. And this is, yours is Sierra Leone. Do you think had you not gone there, you would have come to the same conclusion you are today, like right now?
Not. Who knows where I would have been if I had not. So a couple of things happened. I also read a book called Mountains Beyond Mountains, and had the privilege of meeting one of the most greatest thinkers in the global health arena, Paul Farmer. And it was really Paul on my first day on the job. He stays in Sierra Leone. He originally spends most of his time in the US and other parts of the world, but he stayed in Sierra Leone to meet me. And on my first day on the job, he says to me, or volunteer assignment, he says, "Oh my God, Yvonne, I waited for you to show up." And I'm like, I literally started looking over my shoulders as if to say, who is he talking to? Like because he's a god in the global health arena. But he said to me right then and there, he said, you should be head of HR for a nonprofit. And he planted that in my brain. I had never thought about that before. So I think there is something about the people who come into your life, to push you where you're supposed to go. I have another friend who's an executive coach. You're going to find out in a minute that I love coaches, right? I have another friend that's an executive coach, and he calls them Upta gurus. Upta gurus are these people that just kind of show up in your life to push you where you need to go. Yeah. And he says they might disappear. They may not even hang out. They might look around and say, who is that person? Were they really here? But their whole purpose is to push us to where we're supposed to be. So, what's out? I don't know. If I had not gone to Sierra Leone, if I had not worked for Partners in Health, if I had not met Paul Farmer, if the electricity had actually worked sometimes, I have no idea what I would have been doing. But I will tell you that my manager at the time, we used to connect on WhatsApp periodically. And he said to me one day we connected probably about every 4 weeks. And one day he said, "Oh my God, Yvonne, you are glowing." And he would always say, by the way, "I love your hair," which was hilarious. But he says, "You are glowing. You are not coming back." So even people who met me in that moment saw the transformation. Mm-hmm.
That's pretty
Javier, before your question, so you said you dealt with a lot of coaches and worked with a lot of coaches. If your coach told you back 30 years ago, like it would take you 30 years before you reach your goal, do you think you would have done it?
That's a really good question, Rondi. I think probably my thinking evolved. So if 30 years ago, I would have always said every year I thought I was meeting my goal, if that makes any sense, because I've had some really great jobs. I was C-suite level in my 30s, so it was, but what's interesting, the wiser me who has now spent time with me realizes that my goal 30 years ago was based on other people's paradigm of success.
Mm.
And what I've done now by taking the time to get to know me and learning from lots of people who've given me incredibly tough feedback, but who have given it out of love and out of respect and, you know, all the experiences I've had. Now I've gotten to this place where I'm understanding what my real purpose is and showing up in that way, not without any regard for what other people think I should be doing. And that's huge. And that is freeing. Oh my gosh, that is so freeing.
Being a lifelong learner. That's good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But leaning into your authentic self,
Mm-hmm.
you know, when you stop caring about whether or not this is what other people want you to do, it just creates this different kind of joy and peace, I think. Mm-hmm.
Now, given the landscape
And then you let
of
your hair go curly too.
and social unrest today, and now that in your new role of head of HR, and this answer doesn't have to be specific to your new jobs, your new company, but what is it that you feel like from an HR perspective as an executive that you need to focus on first when you start day one? And it could be any company, it doesn't necessarily have to be.
Yeah.
What do you think?
You know,
what do you think HR professionals should focus on at this point?
I mean, that's a powerful question. I mean, what's happening in this world? I think we have a higher need. We have a higher need for connection, probably more than ever before. And I would say,
correct?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Human to human connection, correct?
Yes, human to human connection. So I've always been that HR person who believes in keeping the human in human resources. And in fact, I've said to people, you're not human resources. You're human, but you're not a resource. You're an asset. So I dial up the human side. Definitely get the strategy of the business and how do you make sure people are highly productive and all that other stuff. But I try to approach relationships with compassion and care. And I think particularly right now in this environment, people are losing loved ones. Most people probably know someone who's lost their job in addition to having lost their life. You know, the sentiment and the feelings about the racial injustice in this country have, you know, just caused levels of exhaustion and pain and frustration, and people are discovering that they were racist and they're trying to deal with what does that mean. And so I think all of us are struggling a little bit right now. So what I want to do in my role, and I have in other roles before, is really spend the beginning of the time just listening and trying to understand what's happening for the workforce, and then trying to understand what they need in order to show up in their best selves every day.
That's good.
Here's a technical question. So with your story, you really earlier you were talking about when you first heard the message that you were going to be a leader, be an executive, top executive in the human resources field. That's almost like that mustard seed, right? Like it's planted, and for you, you watered it, gave it appropriate sun, and it just grew and grew and grew. And then it, provided harvest for you. So that is a very almost spiritual kind of a journey, right? Looking at things that are unseen, right? We have this computer screen, this table, this arm, that's stuff that we can see, but tapping into what your story goes into is that we cannot see. So just demystify all of that, right? And this is technical, just to add some practicality to it. How, on that journey, how were you able to most benefit or utilize or leverage LinkedIn in helping you in that professional journey?
Oh, okay, good. Okay.
Yeah,
Actually, you know what? It's funny. My superpower is that I'm a connector of people and ideas. If that's the simple Yvonne, right? I'm all about connecting people and ideas. So when LinkedIn was invented, and I think it was about 2002 or 2003, I was an early adopter. I was using LinkedIn from day one.
Oh,
And so, I mean, even today, I think I have over 3,000 connections, and I know most of them. Recently, I've been open to, just meeting people that I've never really met before, right? We're either meeting on webinars and things like that, but I do have some form of a connection to every person on there. So LinkedIn helped me a lot. And that's actually a really good question, Javier, because I found out about this job through a friend who knew what I liked and what I was really looking for. And she shared the job with me because I had missed it. It had been posted, but I missed it. But then once I knew I was interested in the role, I went to LinkedIn, I applied, and then I went to LinkedIn and looked at who I had in terms of connections. And there were two people in particular. Enough, I was connected to her, but not greatly. And what I love about this is a great story for anybody who's listening and they wonder if people are willing to be generous. She took the time to really, really get to know me because she knew me a little bit. We had worked in the same company, but she didn't know enough about me to present me internally. She took the time to get to know me, and she went to the recruiter who was working on this job, and she pitched me to that recruiter. And the other person I reached out to did as well. And working for the Gates Foundation is like one of the most coveted spaces on the planet. And the recruiter said, well, we were almost done. He said, but two people came in my office saying, I just had to talk to you. And so that is a story about the power of connections, relationships. And I even give a little credit to LinkedIn on that.
Well, that goes well with a theme that a friend of ours, a mutual friend of the three of us, Seth McCauley, and he calls networking relationshiping. And that's that it kind of epitomizes the definition of that, is developing a relationship with that colleague of yours, getting to know you so that she can have a vested interest in proposing you and presenting you internally. That's the very definition of what true networking and relationshiping should be. So
absolutely.
That's great.
And I think the best relationships, though, are the ones that are mutual. I think too many people look at relationships from the standpoint of what they're going to get out of it. And so they only go and build relationships with people when they think they want something. And that's dangerous. I've always been quite curious and open to new people coming into my life. And there's another great saying that your network is your net worth. Who said George? I forget his last name.
Jay-Z said it before.
Jay-Z said, okay, all right. we'll take the gospel according to Jay-Z. But at any rate, but it only works if it's reciprocal, because people know when you're only showing up when you want something.
Yep.
And so I think my network is willing to work for me because I've usually done something for them already too, or at least I'm willing to. So I think people should think about networks in terms of reciprocal value.
That's good.
That and never stop networking. A lot of people
never stop.
They find a dream job, a dream role, and then that's it. And they don't keep up with the folks that got them there. So I totally agree with you. I think all of us do here.
Hey, if you could go back, would you do anything differently, or do you like the lessons you learned through the process? And if, depending on which one, why?
Well, look, I grew up watching Twilight Zone. So if you change one thing, all that other stuff goes bad. So I think probably the only thing is I moved my poor son a lot. And I underestimated the personal toil of all the changes I created in his life. And so the only thing I probably would have done differently, I guess, is try to keep him in one location. The poor kid, I think by the time he was 18, he'd lived in 9 states, and we're not military. So I think it was a lot of change for him personally, but I also think he's quite resilient, and he has huge empathy, and he builds relationships easily. So right now he's still hating me for it, but I think, he'll probably tell his grandkids about how awesome it was that his mom moved him all over the place. But if I had to do anything differently, maybe being a little more sensitive to creating more stability for him.
That's good. I was talking to a friend the other day, and because of football and moving around from team to team and country to country, I'm well cultured because of that. And I'm able to show empathy to other people that don't look like me because I live and work with them. So it's actually a good thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No, I would you tell my son that?
How old is he today?
He's 27. I'm the mother of a man. Mm-hmm.
Has he expressed the desire to follow your footsteps to Sierra Leone and see with his eyes what you experienced?
No, I mean, I've moved him so much. I have this going joke that he lives in New Mexico right now, and he's in this one house. He could have 9 kids. He's gonna be like, not moving right here. So he hates getting on planes now. I shouldn't be telling his business like this, but yeah, he's the complete opposite of me. And that's a whole nother conversation. I'm open to change, and I'm more extroverted, and my son is a complete introvert. And I didn't understand that he was an introvert until he was about 21. And I remember for his birthday, I said, "My present to you is I finally get you."
What would you tell? What would you tell somebody that's in HR trying to follow in your footsteps to do? And then did certificates, getting all different types of certificates and different things play a part in that?
I think for me, it was more about experience, more so than I do have an SPHR, so I did get the certification. And I don't know, I just did that for my own comfort. But for me, it was really more around experiences. Once I decided after being a banker and I shifted into HR, I started asking people what it took to be a good HR person. And I set out to round myself out, to literally experience every aspect of human resources. So that what I would do is I would bring to the role both this business understanding, a perspective for all the aspects of HR. And then I also went to work for really progressive organizations and took a lot of career risks. So I think what makes a good HR person is if you've seen different business cycles and different environments. So if you could, within one organization, go through a lot of different business cycles, let's say if the organization's big enough or it keeps buying, selling, expanding, I think that's really what makes us good HR partners to the business. So I would say go for breadth and depth of experience. And yes, the certifications are good to have.
This is sort of a cliche question that we as HR professionals, you're often asked this, I'm asked this a lot. Do you finally feel that HR, human capital, that we have a seat at the table now?
I've always had a seat at the table. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I'll do a plug for one organization, Pepsi. I am an old Pepsi girl. And Pepsi was cranking out some of the best HR people on the planet. And you were expected to show up, 5 years of experience, but you had to work your way. You were evaluated on whether or not you were a trusted advisor by executives who were, 15, 20 years more experienced than you. And I remember Mike Feiner, I'll give him a plug. He actually said to me early on, if you're not bringing something, if the executive is only thinking about what they were thinking about before you showed up, then why do I need you in the room? He said, so I expect you to expand the thinking. He said that the good news is, no matter what you say and do, I will respect you and back you up. He said, now privately, I might have, there goes that feedback again. He said, I might have some words for you privately about what you should do differently. He says, but go forth and be courageous. Give it a try because I have your back. And so, I had that organization really early on. I think people will have you at the table if you're bringing something. I think that's, understanding what's going on with the organization, the business, and the executive, and understanding what their unique challenges are, and helping them solve that. That's what gets you at the table. It's having a relevant point of view where you're going to help and add some fundamental value, I think, anyway.
I ask that because I still,
And if they don't want you at the table, go to another restaurant, I say.
Absolutely.
I ask the question because I still encounter folks that, still kind of take 10 steps back and reduce and mitigate or eliminate a lot of the responsibilities and the impact that HR can have. So it's opportunity for folks like you and all of us here on the screen as executive leadership coaches and as HR professionals to help promote and propagate the importance of people and just the coaching of people and leadership coaching. You're a perfect example of how Rambi and Javier and I got together, was talking about collaboration of placing them as coaches with some of my clients. And so you're a perfect example of someone that endorses and embraces the kind of impact that a Javier or a Rambi can have with the direction of your life. So
yeah, I mean, I'm better for it. I mean, no kidding. What we talked about, the network, we talked about the coaching. I mean, the idea is other human beings have this wonderful opportunity to help us become the best versions of ourselves. I mean, we learn a lot about ourselves. And the one other thing I would say about HR is, and about being at the table, it does take courage. I don't think people have talked about that in the function. If you need to be liked, this probably isn't the best role, right? It takes courage. You have to be respected, and your perspective. You need to do things in a way that where you're not off-putting and things like that. But in order to help organizations and individuals to be their best, much like you guys, it takes courage, right?
Absolutely. That's one of our foundational premises is the CASH model, and the C in that is courage. So that's the entryway into whatever kind of progressive, transformative process that you're going to involve yourself with. It's got to start with courage, right?
Yeah.
That is awesome. So I have one more question, and I'm curious. With the state of the world, state of things now, you are at an elite leader in the human resources space. You are the top at your organization, a very prestigious organization. Speaking to individuals out there in our audience, individuals who are just entering the workforce, or individuals who are midway, or even the more seasoned individuals who are seeking that transition or transformation, what are 2 or 3 things that they can do today, this week, actionable, that will propel them closer to their dream job?
Good question. Well, first off, know thyself. Embrace and learn your truth, right? Who are you? What matters to you? And just make a decision to show up in full authenticity. I would say, what we talked about, nurture your network. Get to know people, just having conversations with people, you get to test off ideas and things like that. And I would say go and try some things, right? Right now, what's happened, everything is up for grabs right now. I mean, we are at this important inflection point, and people have this, and I think we're all almost coming to a space where none of us have seen this before. So it's a great opportunity to try something new, right? And so I would say embrace the ambiguity of the moment and try something.
that's key. Embrace the say that again.
Just embrace the ambiguity of the moment and try something. This does feel like a real. Just everything is almost up for grabs, right? New jobs are being created. People who thought they were great leaders are being challenged, and I'm seeing leaders turned over. Human resources is probably needed in a very different way, more than ever. So it's just a different. It's both a difficult and challenging time, but it's also one of great opportunity, I think.
Lots of opportunity.
Absolutely.
Well, we could go on and on. There's a lot of stories and questions we actually wouldn't keep asking you, but there are some really fun questions. So at the end of our show, we typically do a quick rapid fire question session. So kind of humanize and let people know who the real Yvonne is. So don't take too much time to give the response. It's what hits you right at that moment. So you ready?
Okay.
All right. Beach or mountains?
Oh gosh, mountains.
Plane or cruise ship?
Plane.
Books or movies?
Books.
Cubs or White Sox?
White Sox now. Yeah. I'm a South Side girl.
Understood. So this is really important. We're in Texas, the three of us, whenever you come down. So it's very important. Pizza or barbecue?
Oh, barbecue, for sure.
Oh,
if you're in Texas,
surprising.
you have barbecue. Come on.
All right. Excellent. All right. Well, when you come down next and it's safe, we'll take you to some real grub.
I would love that. Hey guys, this has really been fun.
Very, very good. All right, so we're going to close it out, and we normally close out every show with some what we call our dope recommendations. And especially in the time that we're in, there's a lot of healing that needs to take place. There's a lot of support that's needed for just people. You mentioned earlier the human connections, so just people coming together. So here on the Dope Experience, sharing is caring. So we each provide some quote or the title of a profound book or something profound that we're going to leave our viewer and listeners, and it's going to help them somehow, some way as they continue on their days. So let's see. Robbie, can you set it off for us today?
Yeah, I have a quote for my Dr. Angelo. And the quote, we've been talking about belonging. So the quote is, "You are only free when you realize you belong no place. You belong every place, no place at all. The price is high, but the reward is great." And she was talking about that earlier. And I truly believe in that. You have to lean in to who your true authentic self is.
Absolutely. Good one, Robbie. Okay, Sal, what do you have for us?
Well, just to kind of play on and add to that, lean in to your true self. You said something earlier, Yvonne, that struck me. Good things come to those who wait, but great things come to those who go out and get them. So you had this epiphany of, you know what, I'm going to go to Sierra Leone, and that just added to your journey of realization of different things in a different perspective. So you went out and got it. And so ever since that first conversation I had with you, that this quote has always reminded me of your assertiveness and your proactiveness of just getting after it, making a change. So.
Yeah, and that's who you are too. So
very good.
I try. Taking your lead. What you got, Javi?
No doubt. Yeah, I think I'm going to break my book title streak and come with a quote based on this conversation. I was one of my favorite songs from one of the greatest musical geniuses known to music and his genre.
Elvis?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, what?
Come on. Don't play yourself, Sal.
Yeah, you tripping.
That hurts. That hurts right here. That hurts right here. Anyway, my bad.
This one's from Bob Marley. And the Wailing Wailers. All right. Yeah, in the abundance of water, the fool is thirsty. That's from one of my all-time favorite songs called Revolve. And to Yvonne's point, there's a lot of opportunity right now. It's up for grabs, and it just needs individuals who are willing to do what it takes to seize the moment.
That's good.
All right, so now we're going to move the spotlight to you, Miss Yvonne.
Oh, wow. So I have so many, and you just made me think of one as we were reflecting on this conversation. I don't know who said it, but it is probably my mantra, that success is measured not just in accomplishments along the way, but in lives impacted.
Very good.
And
Okay.
that's what I try to live. And I think Maya Angelou said something about that. People will remember how you feel, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And your story is a true testament to that. So
thank you. And you guys made me feel great. So I want to thank you for your time.
As did you.
Yes.
Hey, we appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much. And I'm so glad that you had the opportunity before you start your new gig next week. And from all of us, we wish you the very best. We know that you're going to crush it next week in your new role. So thank you for giving us the chance to have this conversation. So
thank you.
We're happy that you guys tuned in. Join us next time for another episode of The Dope Experience. I'm Sal Vergara with Romby Bryant, Javier Collins, and Yvonne Wolff. We'll see you next time. Take care. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Dope Experience. Our hope is that you're left with a new perspective to formulate a blueprint of growth and transformation. Make sure you subscribe to us on Spotify or wherever you consume podcasts. Stay dope.